The year was 2461 and the stars over Epsilon Prime were calm. The great towers of the Galactic Concord shimmered in the thin light of the twin suns, while the air above the Terran embassy was still. Ambassador Laura King stood by the wide window of her office and watched the spaceport far below where the last human ships waited for clearance to leave. For more than a century, humans had been the steady hand that held the alliance of many races together. But now the embassies were closing, and the diplomats were leaving one by one. She had written her final reports, sealed the archives, and now all that was left was to wait for her own departure order. The corridors outside her office were silent. The alien staff who had worked beside humans for years had gone back to their home governments with faces full of worry. Everyone knew that something important was ending, but no one could say why. The official message from Earth spoke of rest and recovery after generations of peacekeeping and exploration. Yet deep inside, many felt the reason was not as simple as the message claimed. Humans rarely acted without reason, and when they did, it was never. Small Commander Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of the transport, ship Horizon Dawn. His crew moved quietly, around him checking the last data before launch. He had led fleets in battles that were now only memories in the long peace of the Concorde. Yet today his chest felt heavy, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. The evacuation order had come months ago, signed by the High Council of Earth, with the seal of finality. All Terran citizens, soldiers, and settlers were to return to human space. The message had no explanation and allowed no debate. Ethan had served for 30 years and never questioned his orders, but this one made him uneasy. At the port below the Horizon Dawn, long lines of shuttles moved like silver insects. Families boarded with what little they could carry. Children asked why they had to leave, and parents gave them soft answers that meant nothing. The non-human traders watched from a distance, unsure if they should offer help or stay away. No one wanted to offend the humans at this moment. They had built the Concorde through strength and patience, and now that they were leaving, the other races were afraid to speak. Laura received a call from Ethan through the secure line. His face appeared on the screen, calm but tired. He told her that the final ships would depart within the hour. She asked him if he believed this retreat was right. He looked away for a moment before saying that right and wrong were words for people who still believed in peace. He said that the galaxy had grown too comfortable. The Concorde had forgotten how to stand without human support. He said Earth had seen something ahead in the dark, something that made them prepare in silence. He did not know what it was, but he trusted that the Council would not abandon the stars without a reason. After the call ended, Laura sat alone in her office. The hum of the building was soft, but it felt empty. She remembered her first day here decades ago when the hallways were full of voices and laughter. Humans had been the bridge between species. They had mediated conflicts, built colonies, and shared technology freely. Now she wondered if all of that had only delayed something that could no longer be stopped. She opened a small drawer and took out an old photo of her family on Earth. The oceans behind them looked blue and endless. She wondered if they still looked the same, or if even Earth had changed since she had last seen it. At the spaceport, the loading was complete. The Horizon Dawn lifted from the surface in silence. Its engines burned blue light that reflected on the windows of the embassy tower. Laura watched it rise until it became a faint star in the sky. Around her, the lights of the city began to dim. The Concorde guards would take over the building once the humans were gone. She closed her eyes for a moment and listened to the stillness. It felt like the entire planet was holding its breath. Outside the orbit of Epsilon Prime, a formation of human ships gathered. Ethan looked out from the command deck as hundreds of vessels aligned into perfect order. Freighters, science ships, and cruisers all turned toward the outer rim where the navigation markers pointed home. The order to jump came through the secure channel. He gave the command softly, and the stars stretched into long lines as the fleet entered hyperspace. For a few seconds, everything became bright, and then they were gone. Only silence remained behind them. On the planet below, the other ambassadors and council members gathered in the main hall. They stared at the empty seats once held by humans. Some whispered that this was the end of unity. Others said it was only a pause. None of them knew what to believe. The Drath delegate spoke first, saying that the humans must be planning something larger. The Ven representative laughed nervously and said that humans always planned larger, but there was no comfort in his words. Laura walked through the hall one last time. Her steps echoed softly on the marble floor. She placed the Terran flag on the stand near the door and paused before it. The emblem of Earth shimmered in the dim light. She whispered a quiet farewell to the place that had been her home for so many years. Then she turned and walked toward the landing pad where a small shuttle waited. The pilot saluted her and she returned it without words. The engines came to life and the shuttle rose into the darkening sky. From orbit she could see the curve of Epsilon Prime glowing beneath her. For a moment it looked peaceful. Then she remembered Ethan's words about something ahead in the dark. She wondered what kind of future would make humanity abandon the galaxy it had built. The stars stretched before her like a map of unanswered questions. She leaned back in her seat as the shuttle prepared to join the fleet already far ahead. The transmission lights blinked once, signaling connection to the main convoy. She closed her eyes as the jump drive activated and the stars disappeared. Behind them, the galaxy remained quiet, unaware that the balance that had held it together for centuries was now gone. 10 years had passed since the humans left the Galactic Concord, and their absence was like a hole that no one could fill. The great stations that once echoed with their voices now stood quiet and cold. On Epsilon Prime, the halls of the Concord Council were still busy, but without the calm guidance of human diplomats, the meetings were longer and louder. The other races tried to follow the rules humans had left behind, but without their sense of balance, the system began to tremble. Trade fleets argued over routes, border patrols clashed in deep space, and the peace that had seemed unbreakable began to show cracks. Many believed the humans would return soon to fix everything, but years went by, and no message came from Earth. Captain Nira, Vel of the Drath Coalition, leaned against the railing of her ship and looked at the endless dark outside. She had grown up hearing stories about humans, how they could fight harder and think faster than anyone, how they had built the Concord and kept it from falling apart. But Nira had never met one herself. The humans were gone before she joined the fleet. Her current mission was to investigate strange signals coming from a dead world once used by human miners near the edge of the sector. It was supposed to be empty, but her sensors showed faint energy readings that looked too clean to be natural. Her ship, the Luminous Tide, descended through the thin clouds of the abandoned world. The surface was gray and covered with dust storms, but as the ship approached the signal source, she saw large structures buried under the sand. They were human-made. The crew landed near a tower half sunk into the ground. The entrance was sealed, but the codes left in the Concord archives still worked. Inside, the air was cold and dry, and the walls glowed faintly with power. Human technology always had a clean design, simple and strong. Nira felt a strange chill as she walked deeper into the station. She found rows of machines still active and screens filled with unreadable data. Her second officer pointed to a console that displayed a single message written in English. It said only 2 words: "Observation complete." Nira did not understand what it meant. She copied the data and returned to her ship. The deeper scans showed that there were more of these stations across the sector, all linked by some hidden network. None of them transmitted outside, but each one was quietly studying the movement of energy through space, especially near the edges of known systems. It looked like the humans had been watching something far beyond normal patrol zones. Back on Epsilon Prime, the Concord Council received her report with disbelief. Many of them claimed the data was fake or misinterpreted. Others said the stations were old defense systems left behind by mistake. But a few members looked worried. Ambassador Trall of the Ven Dominion said that the humans might have known about something coming from the outer dark. He said that they were preparing to defend themselves not from the Concord, but from something else. No one wanted to listen, because it would mean the humans had left for reasons much larger than politics. Meanwhile, rumors spread among the trade guilds. Some captains swore they had seen ghost ships near the rim, silent vessels that did not answer calls and vanished before scanners could lock on them. Others spoke of small outposts suddenly shutting down after receiving unknown signals. The galaxy was becoming nervous. Without humans to hold the balance, every race began to protect itself. Fleets that once worked together now avoided each other. The idea of unity became weaker every day. On Earth, Commander Ethan Cole sat in the command room of the Terran Defense Network and watched the reports flow across the screens. He had not returned to Epsilon Prime since the withdrawal. He now lived within the walls of a new command base hidden deep under the mountains. The humans had not been idle. While the galaxy argued and searched for meaning, Earth had turned its full strength toward building and preparing. The outer colonies had been fortified, the old fleets rebuilt, and new ships designed that could move faster and strike harder than anything before. It was not just defense anymore. It was readiness. He received a message from Laura King, who had been reassigned to a secret diplomatic branch. She told him that more alien nations were beginning to sense the truth. She asked if he thought the time would come when they would have to face the conquered again. Ethan replied that peace had been a long dream, but dreams end when the stars grow quiet. He said they would wait until the moment was right, but he also knew that waiting was never forever. Across the galaxy, strange things continued to happen. A Ven patrol fleet disappeared near the border of human space. The Drath Coalition lost contact with several deep space stations. When they sent rescue ships, they found nothing but empty docks and data cores wiped clean. Some said it was pirates. Others said it was the work of a new unknown power. No one dared to blame the humans, but the silence from Earth was heavy. The conquered sent envoys to the Terran border, but none were allowed to pass. The message from the human outposts was always the same. No entry authorized. Captain Niravel returned to her homeworld to present new findings. She had discovered more of the strange human stations now active across multiple sectors. They were not weapons, but observation platforms designed to scan gravitational waves and dark matter distortions. Her scientists believed they were tracking something massive moving slowly beyond the edge of known space. The data suggested the humans had known about this phenomenon for decades before they left. When she presented her findings to the council, they dismissed her again. They said the humans had probably made a mistake, but she saw fear in their eyes. As months passed, the small wars became larger. Old rivalries between the Ven and the Drath turned violent. Border clashes erupted near trade lanes that had once been safe. The conquered fleet tried to keep control, but without the authority, humans once held their words carried little weight. Pirate groups formed powerful armadas. Some even claimed to fight in the name of freedom from the old order. The galaxy that humans had built through centuries of effort was now falling apart piece by piece. Ethan Cole watched all of this through the deep sensors of the defense network. Every new conflict confirmed what the Council on Earth had predicted. The conquered was not ready to stand alone. Humanity had given them peace but not strength. He looked out from the command deck at the holographic projection of the galaxy. The outer rim glowed faintly with red markers showing the human observation station still active and silent. He knew that beyond those points something was stirring, something vast and unknown. At night, he often walked through the quiet halls of the base, thinking of the time when humans had believed peace could last forever. He remembered the faces of those who had served beside alien friends and wondered if they would hate what humans were becoming. But he also knew there was no turning back. Humanity had seen what was coming and had made its choice. The others would never understand until it was too late. Far away on Epsilon Prime, the Council held another meeting under the bright lights of the Great Hall. Voices rose in argument and fear. Some demanded to rebuild contact with Earth. Others wanted to form new alliances to prepare for whatever might happen. Outside the hall, the stars above the city seemed quiet, but many could feel that the quiet would not last. The galaxy was beginning to understand that peace was not broken by accident. It was ending by design. The galaxy had grown restless in the 20 years since the humans left, and every world could feel the change. Trade had slowed and alliances had turned into arguments. The Council on Epsilon Prime was breaking apart as leaders accused each other of betrayal. The peace that had lasted for so long now lived only in memory. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone knew that the balance that kept them together had vanished the day the humans departed. Ships still traveled through the old routes, but fewer each year, and the stars seemed to grow colder without the steady presence of Terran fleets. Admiral Jorath of the Ven Dominion was a proud and ambitious leader. He had spent his life watching humans control the flow of power in the galaxy, and he hated that his people had once depended on them. Now with the humans gone, he saw a chance to claim what he believed was rightfully theirs. He gathered a massive fleet at the edge of former human space and told his commanders that they would take the abandoned colonies and the technology left behind. He said the humans were cowards who had run away from their own creation and that the Ven would take their place as rulers of the stars. The fleet moved into the silent systems once controlled by Earth. The planets were dark and lifeless, but the scanners picked up signs of strange energy deep below the surfaces. Jorath ordered a landing on one of the old Terran worlds. The soldiers found underground structures filled with machines still running quietly after all these years. They tried to access the systems, but the moment they connected their devices, the entire network came alive. Lights filled the tunnels and the machines began to hum. The soldiers panicked as their equipment shut down and their ships in orbit lost power. Within minutes, the entire fleet vanished from communication. When a nearby patrol ship came to investigate, it found nothing but drifting wreckage spread across the orbit. The name of the planet was erased from the Dominion maps and the loss was never explained. On Epsilon Prime, the news of the vanished Ven fleet spread quickly. The Council called an emergency meeting, but no one knew who to blame. The Ven accused the Drath of sabotage, the Drath accused the Concord, and the smaller worlds demanded protection that no one could provide. Captain Niravel listened to the arguments from the corner of the chamber and felt the growing fear. She still remembered the human stations she had discovered years ago, and wondered if they had something to do with this. The pattern of these events felt too clean, too precise. She asked the Council for permission to investigate again, but they refused, saying the area was now too dangerous. Far from Epsilon Prime, deep under the mountains of Earth, Commander Ethan Cole stood before a large display showing the entire known galaxy. Red marks blinked where new conflicts had begun. The Human Defense Network was no longer just watching. They had been testing their silent weapons and systems built over the past 2 decades. Every disappearance and destroyed fleet was the result of their hidden operations. Humanity had chosen not to fight openly yet, but they were making sure no one would threaten their borders again. The great project known only as the Horizon Shield was almost complete. It surrounded the edge of human space like an invisible wall made of energy fields and automated defenses. Ethan spoke with Laura King through a secure channel. She had been assigned to a post near the outer colonies and was one of the few people who still hoped that peace could return. She told him that the galaxy was falling apart faster than expected, and that soon the Concord would no longer exist. Ethan listened quietly and then told her that this was the path the galaxy had chosen. He said humanity had offered peace and cooperation for centuries, but now others would have to learn what life without humans truly meant. Laura asked if he believed the humans were still doing the right thing. He paused before saying that sometimes the right thing is not the kind thing. Meanwhile, rumors spread among traders and pirates that ghost ships had been seen again. These ships appeared without warning and moved faster than any known vessel. They attacked only military targets and never harmed civilians. After the attacks, they vanished, leaving no trace. Some claimed they were new alien weapons. Others whispered that the humans had returned. The stories frightened people more than the battles themselves. No one knew what was true anymore, and fear became the strongest force in the galaxy. On one distant moon, a small group of explorers discovered something that confirmed the rumors. They found a hidden human outpost with active defenses. When they tried to enter the system, a warning message was broadcast in clear human speech. It said, "Leave this place now." The explorers fled, and their recordings spread across the networks. The voice was calm and unmistakably human. The Council demanded an explanation from Earth, but Earth did not respond. The silence was louder than any answer could be. Ethan Cole spent his nights looking at the endless data from the observation stations. They showed strange energy waves moving toward the center of the galaxy. He knew this was what the humans had been watching for since before they left. It was the reason for all their secrecy. Whatever was out there was real, and it was coming. Humanity had not told the other races because they would never have believed it. He looked at the files marked Classified Horizon Threat and wondered if even they were ready to face it when the time came. Across the galaxy, the Drath Coalition prepared for war with the Ven Dominion. Old treaties were broken, and fleets gathered near the neutral zones. Niravel was given command of a patrol group and sent to protect the border. She watched from her ship as hundreds of vessels formed up around her. The stars looked sharp and cold outside the viewport. She thought of the humans again and wondered if they were watching. She whispered a quiet wish that they would return before the galaxy destroyed itself completely. Back on Earth, the Council of Leaders met in secret beneath the old capital. They reviewed the reports from all observation stations and confirmed that the dark energy wave was growing stronger. The project to prepare humanity for what was coming was nearly finished. Ethan stood before them and said that the other races would not survive what was ahead. He said they could try to warn them, but they would only panic. The Council agreed that humanity would remain silent until the moment came when intervention was unavoidable. They would defend themselves, and if necessary, the entire galaxy, even if the others saw them as enemies. The lights in the chamber dimmed as the holographic map changed to show the edge of human space. Thousands of small points glowed, marking the positions of new ships and defense grids. It was the largest force ever built by any race. Ethan looked at it with pride and sadness. He knew that peace was gone, but survival was all that mattered now. He closed his eyes and thought of the faces of the allies he had once known. Then he opened them and gave the order to prepare the fleet for full readiness. Far away beyond the rim, the faint signal of an unknown presence reached one of the human stations. The automated systems recorded it and sent a silent alert to Earth. The sensors detected something massive moving through the dark between galaxies. It was not human, and it was not from the Conquered. The machine translated the data into a simple message for human eyes. Object inbound. Unknown origin. The message was sent to Earth, and then the station went dark. The storm humanity had seen so long ago was finally beginning to arrive. The galaxy was falling into chaos, and the name of the Concord no longer carried meaning. Worlds that once called themselves allies now prepared for war, and the stars that had once been full of light were turning dark one by one. The memory of human order was fading, and fear had taken its place. On Epsilon Prime, the once proud council hall stood half empty. Many of its members had fled to protect their own worlds. Captain Niravel watched the sky from her quarters and felt the weight of everything slipping away. Reports came every hour about lost fleets and destroyed colonies. The Ven Dominion and the Drath Coalition were locked in a conflict that no one could stop. It was no longer about power or pride. It was about survival. Across the old trade routes, ghost ships continued to appear. They struck military targets with perfect precision, then vanished before any pursuit could begin. Some said they were pirates using stolen human designs. Others whispered that they were humans themselves returning to punish the galaxy. The truth was something no one could prove, but everyone could feel that the galaxy was being watched again, just as it had been long ago. One morning, a signal reached the main relay stations of the Conquered. It was a simple voice speaking in clear human language. The voice said, "Peace is finished." Then the transmission ended. Moments later, hundreds of human warships appeared across known space. They came from hyperspace without warning, forming around key planets and military outposts. They did not attack cities or civilians. Instead, they destroyed only fleets and weapon platforms. Their movements were exact and their power beyond anything the current races could match. Within hours, entire armadas disappeared and communication networks began to fail. The humans did not speak again. They came and they vanished, leaving silence behind them. Ambassador Laura King, who had spent her last years working in quiet exile, received a call from Earth Command to address the Conquered Council one final time. Her hair had turned gray and her eyes carried the sadness of someone who had waited too long for something she knew would never return. Through hologram, she appeared before the frightened council members. She told them that humanity had not abandoned them out of fear but out of necessity. She said that humans had given them every chance to build peace together, and that chance had been wasted. She said that humanity was now acting to protect what it had built, and that the age of negotiation was over. The council shouted for explanations. Some begged for mercy. Others demanded that the humans stand trial for their attacks. Laura listened in silence until the voices died down. Then she said the galaxy had been warned through its own failures. She said the humans had spent decades watching and waiting for the moment when peace would no longer serve. That moment had come. She told them that the darkness they feared was not only in space but in themselves. Then she ended the transmission and the hall fell silent. For the first time in years, no one spoke. They all knew that something had changed forever. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched as his fleet moved through the black of space. The ships were quiet and efficient. Every order was carried out with precision. He had served through wars and peace and now through something that felt like both. His mission was not to conquer but to erase threats before they could reach human space. The Horizon Shield had been completed and now humanity was surrounded by a wall no other race could break. He knew this was not victory but survival. Yet he could not help feeling the weight of what they had become. On one of the destroyed Ven worlds, the smoke rose into the thin air as the remains of ships drifted above. Niravel and a small group of survivors landed there searching for clues. They found traces of human weapons and markings that confirmed what many already believed. The humans had returned and they were no longer peacekeepers. She touched the burned metal of a fallen cruiser and whispered that this was not the way it was supposed to end. She remembered the stories of the humans who had saved her people generations ago and could not understand how the same species could now bring such cold destruction. Back on Earth, Ethan Cole received a new report from the observation network. The dark energy wave that had first been detected decades earlier was growing stronger and closer. He gathered his officers and told them that humanity was now ready to face whatever came. The attacks across the galaxy were part of a larger plan to remove distractions and prepare the way for what was coming. He said that when the storm reached them, they would stand alone if they had to. The officers listened in silence, knowing that the decision had already been made long ago. Laura King left her station and returned to her quarters. She sat by the window watching the blue glow of the earth below. For years, she had believed that peace could survive if people simply tried harder to understand each other. Now she saw that understanding had its limits. She thought of all the races she had met across the stars and wondered if any of them would forgive what was happening. She doubted it, but she also knew that forgiveness was no longer part of the plan. She closed her eyes and whispered a quiet farewell to the galaxy she had once loved. In the outer systems, the human fleets continued their silent campaign. They destroyed weapons and fortresses, then disappeared again. The message was clear. Humanity was reclaiming control. Planets that once challenged the humans now sent out surrender signals hoping to avoid destruction. The humans did not respond. They moved like shadows through the void, answering to no one. The other races began to understand that they were no longer dealing with diplomats or explorers. They were facing something far colder. A civilization that had decided survival mattered more than peace. Niravel managed to send a message through the damaged communication network. She addressed whoever might still be listening. She said that if the humans had truly returned, then maybe they had seen something none of them could imagine. She said they had to believe there was still some part of the old alliance left inside the Terrans. Her words reached only a few scattered stations, but among them there were still those who remembered the old days and hoped she was right. Ethan Cole stood once more before the great display showing the galaxy. Red lights marked every system where human fleets had acted. The map looked like it was bleeding. He thought of all the lives that had been lost and all the worlds that now feared the name of humanity. He wished there had been another way, but the Council on Earth had chosen this path and he had sworn to follow. He whispered quietly to himself that the galaxy would remember why peace had once mattered, even if they had to be forced to see it through fire. At the edge of known space, the first signs of the dark wave appeared again. The sensors picked up energy so vast that it bent the light of stars. The human fleets began to move toward the frontier. Ethan watched as they formed up in perfect lines ready for battle. For a brief moment he thought of the faces of the allies who had once stood beside them. Then he turned away from the screen and gave the order to advance. The stars outside glowed white for a moment as the engines ignited and the fleet disappeared into the dark. The humans had returned and the galaxy would never be the same again. The stars were quiet after the storm. The galaxy had changed and the name of humanity was now spoken with both fear and awe. Where there had once been trade and friendship, now there was only silence. The Concord no longer existed and most of its worlds had fallen into isolation. The human fleets had withdrawn to the edge of known space and built a wall of steel and energy that no one could cross. Across the stars, the memory of their return was still fresh. The message "Peace is finished" had become a legend whispered in the dark corners of space. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the endless line of defense stations that surrounded human space. The Horizon Shield was complete. Billions of lives had been spent building it, and now it glowed faintly like a ring of fire around the heart of the Terran systems. He thought of everything that had been lost to reach this point. The humans had not conquered, but they had taken control. No one could challenge them now. But Ethan did not feel victory. He felt a strange emptiness as he looked at the quiet stars and wondered if peace had ever truly existed at all. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, the Council met again in secret. The reports from the outer observation stations confirmed that the dark energy wave was still moving closer. It had destroyed 3 unmanned probes and caused gravity storms across empty systems. The scientists believed it was a massive object traveling through space, a remnant of something older than the galaxy itself. They said it would reach the outer rim within a few years. The Council agreed that the human fleets must remain ready at all times. They had removed every threat inside the galaxy, but now the real enemy was coming from beyond. Ambassador Laura King sat in her home on Earth overlooking the quiet plains. She no longer worked for the Council. Her role had ended after the last transmission to the Concord. She spent her days writing records of everything that had happened. She wanted future generations to understand why peace had ended. She knew the truth was not simple. Humanity had acted out of fear and necessity, but also pride. She believed they had done what they thought was right, but she also knew that right was not the same as good. Sometimes survival left no room for kindness. She watched the night sky and wondered if any of the old allies still looked toward Earth, and remembered what friendship had once felt like. On a small station near the rim, Captain Nira Vel sat in the command chair of the last Drath exploration ship still operating. Her homeworld had been silent for months. Many of her people had gone into hiding or fled to distant colonies. She refused to give up. She believed the humans were not the monsters the stories claimed. She had seen their actions and knew they could have destroyed everything but had not. She decided to send one final message into the void addressed to anyone who might still listen. She said that the galaxy had lost its balance but not its hope. She said that maybe one day, humans and others could meet again without fear. Then she sent the message and waited. The message never received a reply, but the signal kept moving through space. Ethan Cole received a quiet alert that the message had been detected by the border stations. It was decoded and sent to his terminal. He read the words carefully, and for the first time in many years he smiled. The message was small and simple, but it reminded him that there were still voices out there that believed in more than survival. He saved the message to the archive and closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the past. He remembered the time when he had stood beside alien commanders who trusted him completely. He wondered if they would understand what humanity had become. He doubted it, but he hoped they would at least remember why they had fought for peace once. The dark energy wave continued to move closer. The outer stations recorded strange patterns in its structure. It was not a single object, but a swarm of massive bodies bound together by gravity. The scientists on Earth called it the approaching storm. Every day, new data arrived showing that it was accelerating. Ethan ordered the fleets to take defensive positions along the rim. Thousands of ships aligned across the stars, forming a line of light that stretched farther than any human could see. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. For the first time in centuries, all of humanity stood united again with a single purpose. On Epsilon Prime, what remained of the Council received news of the approaching storm as well. Without humans to lead them, they did not know what to do. Their fleets were weak and their worlds tired. Some suggested sending a message to Earth asking for help, but others refused, saying that the humans would never listen. They argued for hours until one old ambassador finally said that perhaps this was how it was meant to be. The humans had given them a chance long ago and they had wasted it. Now they would face the future alone. The room fell silent and no one spoke again. Laura King watched the broadcasts of the human fleet preparing for war. The sight filled her with pride and sorrow. She knew that when the storm arrived, the battle would decide everything. Humanity would either survive and become something greater, or fall and leave nothing behind. She wrote her final entry in her record, saying that history would remember this as the day the galaxy learned the true cost of peace. She ended her message with a single line saying that kindness without strength fades, but strength without kindness destroys. The day came when the storm reached the edge of human space. The sensors went dark as the massive wave of energy hit the outer stations. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge, surrounded by the glow of tactical screens. The first images showed shapes moving within the wave, giant structures made of unknown materials. They were not natural. Something ancient and powerful had come from beyond the stars. Ethan gave the order to engage. The human fleets opened fire, and the dark turned to light as thousands of weapons cut through the void. The enemy responded with waves of energy that tore through ships like paper. The battle lasted for days and spread across hundreds of systems. Every ship fought until it burned. The Horizon shield held but barely. Laura watched from Earth as the reports came in. Whole fleets were gone, but the line had not broken. The humans had stopped the storm at the edge of the galaxy. The cost was beyond measure, but they had done what they had set out to do. They had protected not just themselves, but every world within reach. The message spread across the stars faster than light. The humans had saved the galaxy again. For the first time in years, the other races spoke of them not with fear, but with awe and gratitude. Peace had been finished, but something new had begun. When the fighting ended, Ethan Cole stood on the silent bridge of his damaged flagship. The stars were calm again and the darkness had retreated. He looked at the quiet screen showing the map of the galaxy. The line of the Horizon shield still glowed faintly, though parts of it were broken. He thought of all who had fallen and knew their sacrifice had given the galaxy another chance. He turned to his crew and said that they would not rebuild the old peace but something stronger. A peace not born from weakness but from understanding. The crew nodded and the ship began its slow return to Earth. On her small station, Niravel received a faint signal weeks later. It was from the human fleet. The message was short. It said, "The storm has passed, we are still here." She smiled through tears and whispered that maybe peace was not truly finished after all. She watched the stars outside her window and felt hope return for the first time in years. The galaxy had survived, and though it would never be the same again, there was still light in the dark. The humans had left once, but now they had returned not as conquerors but as guardians of everything that remained.